listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Thursday, July the 25th. I am your host, Michael Leva, flying solo today, as we're going to run down everything that took place on the practice field at the Miami Dolphins' second practice of this training camp. I have an update on Jaylen Holland, as he took a nasty spill yesterday at practice. I'll let you know how he's doing. And yes, we'll talk Tua as well, because that's the world we're in right now as fans of the Dolphins. But today's show is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers, your Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? Don't worry. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home. And yes, they will ship internationally as well if you're not in the United States. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. And also, before we start, a quick shout out to everyone listening at FinHeaven.com. Everyone go to FinHeaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. And a shout out to everyone at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are a part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, Podbean, Podchaser, YouTube, Audible, or one of the other 100 platforms are on, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss an episode. We're going to have shows each and every day of the week throughout this training camp, and we'll give you notes and breakdowns of what happened that day of practice. And then when we get to the season, we have shows every day of the week as well. So you're not going to want to miss an episode. We're going to have you covered like no other outlet each and every day in audio form when it comes to the Miami Dolphins for this entire training camp and all this season. So subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. It always helps. All right, first Jaylen Holland, who took a nasty spill in practice on Wednesday and was down on the ground for a bit, had to go to the sideline, and was being looked at by medical trainers. He said that the contact he took on Wednesday with that nasty spill resulted in a thigh contusion and bruising that has since subsided. So very good news there. He said, and I quote, "It goes away, but it was crazy. It was like 1 minute I'm running up. Next minute I'm like, why are my feet above my head?" So could have been worse. Jaylen Holland's fine, and good news there. He was also asked about a new contract and extension because, he's going to be a free agent after this year. And his answer was, whenever they want to call, I'll pick up the phone. So Holland's, he's ready to talk, him and his agents. But here's the deal with Holland and his extension. Two things. Number one, well, actually three things. We know Chris Grier only likes to pay premium position players. Unfortunately, safety is not a premium position player, so I don't know if Chris Grier is going to want to pay big money to a safety. It's number one. Number two, if the Dolphins don't, well, I think Miami's not going to do anything with Holland until they figure out the Tua situation now. So I think his contract is on the back burner. Also, they're probably going to want to see how he plays a year in this Anthony Weaver defense, this new style defense, this new scheme. Obviously, if he takes to it like a fish to water and is a key piece, that would go a long way in him getting a long-term deal. If he's not an integral part, key piece. See, the funny part is he might not like Vic Fangio, and that Vic Fangio scheme, he had his best season ever because that's Vic Fangio scheme put a spotlight on his safety and safety play, and Holland excelled. So he might not have liked him, but he was great in that role. And the last thing is this, I'll say. if the Dolphins don't give Tua a long-term deal this year, and they're going to play the franchise tag game with him after this year, there's only one franchise tag. Can't franchise tag both Tua and Holland. So if the plan is after this season, we're going to use a franchise tag on Tua because we can't give him a long-term deal now, then Holland can't be tagged, and he will be a free agent on the open market. And you probably know from a salary cap perspective, Miami's not in the best shape. 2025 is a long way away, I know. So that would not be good. So there's a lot going on with Holland and his contract, but he's here for this year, and I think we should just enjoy that. And the other stuff will work itself out over time. Speaking of Tua, everyone's favorite topic, day 3 of training camp, second practice. Today, on Wednesday, he did 7-on-7 drills. He did no 11-on-11 drills except for 2 snaps, which were both handoffs. So he did no 11-on-11 drills. And he was like a half participant when it comes to practice. Today, he didn't practice at all. No reps. Put on a jersey and, stood on the sideline and watched. And I know you see people on social media, God bless their heart. They're out there spewing BS, trying to spin this like, even though he didn't participate, he was really engaged helping people, folks. He's holding out, or it's a sit-in, whatever you want to call it, where until he gets a new contract, he's not going to practice. It is what it is. Own it. You don't have to spin this, okay? The public is on Tua's side here. Everyone's pissed off at the Dolphins. They feel he should have got this contract extension earlier this offseason. They should never got this far. You don't need to twist yourselves into pretzels and spin, saying, he's really engaged, even though he's not practicing. Okay. So just own it. And then you see some of the other sicko fans out there saying, this was a veteran rest day. He really didn't sit out practice. It's a veteran's rest day. Today, Armstead, Jordan Poyer, and Kendall Fuller, they had a veteran's rest day. Understood. They're all a little bit older. We obviously know with Armstead, Jordan Poyer is like the oldest guy in the team. They got veteran rest days. A quarterback who wears a red jersey, who never gets hit, who didn't really practice yesterday, he didn't get a veteran rest day on day 2. Okay, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. If someone's trying to tell you that nonsense, it's spin. It's spin. As someone once said, this is a no-spin zone. So it's just he's not practicing because he wants a new contract. That's all this is. It's not that deep. Anyone who's trying to convince you it's something else is just trying to play you for a fool and trying to paint him in a light, which he doesn't even need to be painted in a good light. Everyone already sees him in a good light. I agree. Tua should not be on the practice field without a new contract. The Dolphins have done him wrong. They've had all offseason to get this done. If they don't want to pay him fair market value, that's Chris Grier's problem and their fault. They should have done this prior to Lawrence getting paid and Jared Goff getting paid and Love was about to get. They should have done this back in March or April or May. That's their fault. No, you don't need to spin this to make Tua look good. Tua already looks good. But don't lie to me and tell me it's a veteran rest day or he's really engaged. When yesterday he refused to do 11-on-11 drills. Okay, just stop. We're not idiots. We all know what's going on here. It's a crappy situation that the Dolphins front office has put the team in as early part of training camp. I don't know what the end game is here for either side. Other than Miami handing him a new deal that he wants, I don't know what the end game is here for the Dolphins. I don't know what the end game is here for Tua. If you're the Dolphins, you can't go through an entire training camp with Mike White taking the majority of the snaps and think week 1, when you play Jacksonville, you're just going to say, okay, Mike, even though you did all of training camp, you're not our starter. And let's put in a guy who hasn't practiced in a month, essentially. That's not going to be – that won't work. I mean, they can do it. You're not going to have a successful season that way. And for Tua, at some point, do you say – at some point, do you see the handwriting on the wall that you might not be getting a new deal this year? And when do you go back to practice to do what's best, A, for yourself if you're going to be a free agent next year, and B, what's best for the team? So I don't know what the end game is. You're like, what's the date? Now, the Miami Dolphins have their first practice open to the public this Sunday. And, a lot of fans are going to be making a trip out there to Miami Gardens, and they're not going out there to watch Mike White throw passes. That might be what they get. But those fans are not going to be happy if Mike White's taking all the first-team reps, or they're only going to watch Tua run a couple 7-on-7 drills and then turn and hand off and spend half the practice on the sideline watching. You're going to have some angry fans if that's the case. And we know when it comes to Tua, the fan base, is very vocal and very much in his corner, and I'm sure they're going to voice their displeasure. So that might be interesting this Sunday. Again, it's only July 25th. If this lasts a few days or a week or even 2 weeks, in the big picture, I guess it's no big deal. There's still plenty of time in training camp and practice for everything to be okay. But if this is going to be what the entire training camp is, where some days he's not going to practice, some days he's only going to do certain things, that's not good. Miami has a joint practice with Atlanta on August 6th. It's July 25th at 6 p.m. as I record this. So that's about 12 days away. If Tua isn't involved in those joint practices on August 6th and Mike White's taking all the first team reps, this is officially a clown show at that point. Now, it's close to being a clown show now. It's close. But I will give them time. It's only the second practice. I'm not going to go nuts here. But on August 6th, it's 12 days away. If this is still ongoing with what we've seen the first 2 days of this training camp practice, then this is a full-blown circus. So, in my opinion, Miami and Tua, Miami Dolphins, Chris Grier, Mr. Ross, Mike McDaniel on one side, and athletes first with Tua on the other side, have 12 days to do either one of two things. A, agree to terms on a contract and end this. Or B, both sides have to just announce, look, we tried. No new deals coming this offseason. That Tua is going to play out the fifth year of his contract, and then next offseason he'll be a free agent, whether the Dolphins put a franchise tag on him, whether he walks and he goes somewhere else, or they come to terms on a deal after the season when he is a free agent, whatever. But at some point, each side has to be like, we're not close. This isn't going to happen now, and we need you a practice. And at that point, if Tua and his agents are told you're not getting a new long-term extension now this year, and then he still holds out from practice, well, then the court of public opinion might turn to be like, you were told, Tua, you're not getting a new deal. You have a contract for this year. You can practice now. And if he still refuses to practice, we will reevaluate how we see things through a lens at that point. But I think by August 6th, that's, you can't have Mike White taking all these snaps versus Atlanta in a joint practice. I mean, Tua has to be there at least 3 to 4 weeks prior to the season. Now, I don't even care if he plays in a preseason game because he probably won't. But he needs at least 3 to 4 weeks full practice here before week 1 in Jacksonville. And I think that August 6th date with the joint practice is kind of, in my opinion, maybe not theirs. What do they care? What I think, a good date to sort of circles the next landmark date on the calendar. Because I don't know if he's going to do anything this weekend. I don't know if he's going to do anything the first part of next week. But those joint practices are very good practice because it's a controlled environment. That's just how I see it. Right now, I think the majority of fans of the Dolphins view the Miami Dolphins organization as the bad guys here, that they've mishandled this. But that could change again if they go public and say we're not going to give him a long-term deal and he continues to hold out. The court of public opinion might change in that, but that's not what it is right now. And this whole situation this week, why it's kind of been frustrating for me, and I think for a lot of fans of the Dolphins, it's just kind of sad that this is how this training camp is opening. This team has a lot of potential for this year. We're hearing great things early, only a few days into training camp and only 2 practices about what Anthony Weaver has done on the other side of the ball and some of the things he's putting in and some of the things I know they're not wearing pads and there's been no hitting and stuff, but just sort of some of the concepts he's sort of run out there. Jaylen Phillips is putting out, or he's not putting out, people are putting out videos of him, and it looks very promising that his return might happen sooner rather than later. It's going to be year 3 of this offense, which has more weapons than it's had in years 1 and 2, and we expect a big year from the offense, and that should improve. The Bills are wounded a little bit. Their offense lost a bunch of pieces, especially at wide receiver. They're not as good as they were last year. The Jets are the Jets. They're just the Jets. It feels like Miami is primed to sort of win this AFC East and have a solid season. Yeah, there's questions about the pass rush and questions about the offensive line. We get it, but there are high hopes and high expectations into the season. But it just feels like the first few days of training camp is such an internal mess that they're sabotaging themselves early on. And I know it's only July 25th, and I'm not saying the sky is falling. I'm not saying that. Now, I'm not saying that the season's over. I'm not saying that. They're going to win a lot of games this year. But It would, to say that, training camp has started off on a positive note would be a lie, because it hasn't, because of this. And I don't know how long this is going to go, but if it continues to go for another week or 2 or 3, that's not good. So hopefully there's some sort of resolution soon. If they're not going to pay him, if they're so far apart that they're not going to pay him a long-term deal this offseason, just go public and say it. And then everyone knows everyone's cards are on the table. Then everyone can do what they're going to do from there and just go from there. But I don't know. We'll see. We will see. All right, practice notes. Again, when these practice notes, I'm not there, so I read the notes of the people who are. Again, I'm sharing their view of this. Don't read into like, oh, it's very negative. That's very positive. It's a practice. There's positive plays. There's negative plays. Not everything's good. Not everything's bad. So today I'm going to read notes from Joe Shad from the Palm Beach Post and Omar Kelly of the Miami Herald. So let's get into today's practice. Joe Shad talking about Tua, saying he was on the sideline. He held a football in his left hand and what may have been a listening device in his right hand, listening to what they were saying to the quarterbacks in the earpiece. So that's what he did. Linebacker David Long is still working on his side in an orange jersey and is not ready to practice, but he was hitting the blocking sled hard and looks closer. One day after a scare, Javon Holland was participating, as we said. Jonnu Smith and Teron Armstead are not spotted as participants. Armstead, as we said, is going to have some Veterans Rest Day, which that was confirmed after. Jaylen Phillips was working on the side. Bradley Chubb and Cameron Good continue their rehab work. So obviously Jaylen Phillips is ahead of the other two, so he should be back sooner. Mike White hit fullback Alec Ingold for a long completion. Jaylen Waddle made a nice grab over the middle from Mike White. Calais Campbell and Kendall Fuller had a Veterans Rest Day, as we said. Running back Chris Brooks fumbled. Running back Chris Brooks fumble, which was recovered by Isaiah Mack. Brooks later also dropped a pass. Channing Tindall had a pass breakup. Emmanuel Ogbah wore the orange jersey today. The guy was just signed, Monday or Tuesday? No, Tuesday. And second practice, he's already wearing the orange jersey for the performance he had yesterday in practice, so that's kind of cool. Pass rusher Quentin Bell is off to a nice camp start. Quentin Bell made a few plays yesterday, made a few plays today. Someone to keep an eye on. We obviously know Miami's going to need some pass rushers, and everyone's hoping that, the Chop Robinsons and Mohamed Kamaras, are good. But Quentin Bell's another name here. The first 2 days of practice, just 2 days. You can't get over your head here and go nuts. But he's made some plays here, so someone to keep an eye on, especially when the pads go on next week. Center, Ireland Brown had a bad snap. It was the second straight day that a Miami Dolphins center had a bad snap. Yesterday, Jack Driscoll, when he was at center, he had a bad snap exchange. Emmanuel Ogbah had a sack. And also something with Ogbah, he's wearing number 51 right now. That might change after they start cutting people, but right now he's wearing 51. Elijah Campbell had an interception of Mike White. And Kader Kohu, the cornerback, third-year cornerback now, had 2 pass breakups. So those are some of the notes here from Joe Shad. Now, Omar Kelly, let's share his notes as well. He goes, besides the 6 players who are on the PUP list, others did not practice. Like we said, Jordan Poyer and Kendall Fuller, as well as Calais Campbell. He didn't practice as well. He had a Veterans Rest Day with Jonnu Smith and Armstead. In one of the best plays on Thursday, Mike White, he hit Alec Ingold for a 60-yard touchdown on a deep pass. So that was probably the pass Joe Shad was talking on. It was a 60-yard deep throw touchdown. Jaylen Waddle had a nice 15-yard gain from Mike White. Former Giants linebacker Cam Brown sacked Mike White in 7-on-7 drills. Brown was a key special teams player for the Giants. He also had a nice stop in the backfield on the left side of a running play in practice later on. Deshaun Hand and Emmanuel Ogbah were owning their side of the trenches in the first 11-on-11 period. Mind you, there's no pads on, but you can sort of tell who's getting the better of who with trained eyes, which someone like Omar does have. Ogbah sacked White, his second sack in 2 days. The Chris Brooks play, we know about that. Outside linebacker Quentin Bell set the edge very effectively and tackled Achane in the backfield. Bell has had a strong start to the training camp, which everyone there seems to agree on. The defensive line owned the offensive line in the trench battle of the first 11-on-11 period. In one sequence, White had the entire defensive line in his face before he threw the ball, 3 seconds after he likely would have been sacked. Undrafted Rutgers rookie center Ireland Brown had a high snap to Skylar Thompson. Receiver Anthony Schwartz had a nice kickoff return getting to midfield. Defensive tackle Zach Sealer had a nice tackle for loss on the right-hand side when Raheem Mostert was carrying the ball. River Craycraft beat Sirianni Neal for a respectable gain on a pass from Skylar Thompson. Hardison, the 4th-string quarterback, now the 3rd-string quarterback with no Tua out there, rebounded from a poor first practice to make some nice throws, including an inside seam pass to Tyreek Hill, who was moving as if someone hit the fast-forward button while defenders were standing still. The undrafted UTEP quarterback also hit a 15-yard pass to Braylon Sanders in the middle of the field. Mike White was picked off by Elijah Campbell on a pass intended for Durham Smythe. Agbo was in his face on the play, which was a bootleg by Mike White. Patrick Paul held Chop Robinson down in an attempt when Skylar Thompson was a quarterback. Jalen Ramsey laid his shoulder into tight end Tanner Connor at the conclusion of a screen pass that already had gone for a first down. Cater Crow had 2 pass breakups in the final 11-on-11 session. Tight end Tanner Connor caught a short sideline pass from Mike White, who outsprinted 2 defenders to the end zone. Connor's speed was impressive on the play. Tyreek Hill caught a 25-yard sideline pass from Skylar Thompson at the end of practice. Ethan Bonner was in great position in coverage and might have deflected the ball, but the all-pro wide receiver Tyreek Hill caught it nonetheless. So those are some of the highlights and a recap of what took place on the practice field. Again, with no pads on, you take this stuff with a grain of salt. Sunday is the first practice open to the fans. So for those of you heading out there, have a great time. Watch out for the heat. And that's going to be the first one open to the public. And I think they have here's the practice schedule open to the public next few days. Sunday the 28th, Monday the 29th, Tuesday the 30th. Then Wednesday, I think, is an off day. Then they're back Thursday, Friday, Saturday with 3 more open to the public. So for those of you heading out there, that's the upcoming schedule. And yeah, we'll see what happens here with Tua moving forward. We all know the kind of deal that we're in now. We'll see how this plays out. I think we're going to have twists and turns every day. Hopefully this is over before we know it. But yeah, it sounds like right now that the defense is ahead of the offense, which is not a shock when you're starting quarterbacking out there. But we're not really going to know until they put on the pads. But those are some of the highlights and some of the people who are making some plays here on the second Miami Dolphins practice. Everyone, check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com, for all the latest on the Dolphins, original commentary, podcast, audio, video. You don't want to miss it. Also, be sure to follow us on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Threads, at Dolphins Talk. If you want to write for DolphinsTalk.com, or if you have an established podcast you think you want to join our team, please feel free to email me at DolphinsTalk1977@gmail.com. Serious inquiries only. If you don't have experience, that's fine, but serious inquiries only. I can't have you sort of be half in, half out. You have to be sort of all in if that's something you want to pursue. So again, you can email me at DolphinsTalk1977@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening. We know there's a ton of podcast options out there, not just with the Miami Dolphins, but with the NFL, fantasy football, the NBA, movies, TV, politics, all that, true crime. You have so many options, and we do appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to join us and listen and be part of our DolphinsTalk.com family. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So, and everyone, have a great rest of your Thursday if you're listening on Thursday. If you're listening on Friday morning, have a great Friday. We'll talk to you again after a while. And folks, don't forget, we still must put an end to highway profanity.